Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive into the really challenging but honestly fascinating ideas of a giant of 20th century Orthodox theology, Vladimir Lossky. He was wrestling with one of the biggest questions you can even ask. How can we, as humans, possibly begin to speak about God?
But here's the thing. To really get Lossky's answer, we have to understand the world he came from. This quote from the 1800s kind of says it all. Russia was this intense intellectual and spiritual pressure cooker, a nation just desperately trying to figure out its own soul and its destiny on the world stage.
Okay, let's jump in. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to meet the man himself, explore the whole historical quest he was a part of, and then we'll unpack his huge central idea, this path of unknowing. We'll see how he applied it to basically everything, look at the big debate it started, and finally ask why this whole idea of negation might actually be, well, a positive thing.
All right, so first up, let's get a clear picture of the thinker right at the center of our story today. So, Vladimir Lossky's life was basically forged in the fire of the Russian Revolution. He was born in 1903, but he was exiled and had to spend his most important years in Paris. And you know, that experience of being in exile, of being cut off from his homeland, it totally shaped his work. It really forced him to figure out how to explain the very essence of his faith to a whole new Western audience.
Now, Lossky's ideas, they didn't just pop up out of thin air. Nope. They were really the peak of a soul-searching debate that had been raging inside Russia for about a century. The 19th century was just an absolute whirlwind for Russia. I mean, think about it. 1 minute, Napoleon's army is burning Moscow to the ground. Then, just 2 years later, the Russian Tsar is riding his horse triumphantly into Paris. That kind of whiplash, from total defeat to epic victory, plus all the revolutionary turmoil at home, it forced Russian thinkers to ask this huge question. Who are we? Are we European? Or are we something else entirely?
And that one question basically split the country's thinkers into two big camps. On one side, you had the Westernizers. They were saying, look, our future is with Europe. We got to embrace science, liberalism, reason. But on the other side were the Slavophiles. They argued that Russia's true path was inward, back to its unique Orthodox faith, its deep-rooted traditions, and what they saw as its mystical soul. Lossky, he's a direct heir to this Slavophile way of thinking.
And right at the heart of that Slavophile vision was this really powerful, almost mythical idea: Moscow, the third Rome. The concept was that after the original Rome fell, and then Constantinople fell, the torch of true Christianity had been passed to Moscow. Now, this wasn't just politics. It was a deep-seated belief in Russia's sacred, almost God-given role in world history.
So, how does all this history lead us to Lossky's big idea? Well, he basically takes this deep mystical tradition that we've been talking about and sharpens it, turns it into a really rigorous way of thinking about theology.
Lossky starts with what is maybe the fundamental problem of all theology, a question that has kept thinkers up at night for thousands of years. Our language, our concepts, our very minds are all limited, right? But God, by definition, is unlimited. So, how in the world do you bridge that gap? How can you say anything true about a reality that is completely beyond your ability to understand?
Lossky's answer, which he pulls from the deep well of Eastern Christian thought, is something called apophatic theology. People often call it the negative way, and instead of trying to pile up definitions of what God is, you do the exact opposite. You systematically deny that any of our human ideas can possibly contain God. It's a path of subtraction, a path of unknowing.
And this slide just lays out the difference perfectly. The positive, or cataphatic way, is the one we're probably most used to. We say things like, God is good, God is love. But Lossky says this is always going to be limited. The apophatic way tries to correct this by saying God is not finite, not limited, not even contained by our human idea of goodness. It's like a sculptor who doesn't add more clay, but instead carves away all the stone that isn't the statue. By taking things away, you reveal the true form.
Okay, and this is absolutely key. For Lossky, this whole negative way thing wasn't just some intellectual game. No, for him, this was the master key that unlocked the entirety of the Christian faith. It was a complete system of thought. He took this apophatic lens and just applied it to everything. Take the Trinity. Lossky would say, first, we have to admit our human concepts of 1 and 3 just don't cut it when we're talking about God. Or think about what it means to be human. If we're made in the image of a God we can't fully know, then our own human nature must also hold a deep mystery. For Lossky, every part of faith, from core beliefs to worship and icons, was about pointing towards a mystery that our words could never, ever fully capture.
Now, as you can probably guess, arguing that the best way to talk about God is to actually talk about what God is not, well, that was a pretty radical idea, and it sparked a huge international conversation.
Yeah, his work was just impossible to ignore. It kicked off this major global conversation. You can see here, leading theologians from all over the world, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, they all felt like they had to respond. They engaged with his ideas, they critiqued them, they challenged his really radical focus on negation. And the fact that so many heavy hitters weighed in, it just shows you how seriously Lossky's project was taken.
So what's the big takeaway here? I mean, why should this focus on unknowing from a 20th century Russian exile in Paris? Why should that matter to any of us today?
And this really gets to the heart of it. For Lossky, this negative path is not a dead end. It's not about skepticism. It's not about saying we can't know anything at all. It's actually a profound act of intellectual honesty, of spiritual reverence. It's a way to stop ourselves from mistaking our tidy little concepts for God himself, to stop us from turning our own ideas into idols that block us from the real living mystery.
So that leaves us with a really challenging final thought. I mean, we live in an age that promises us instant answers for everything, right? We've got endless data and explanation for anything just a click away. In a world like that, what could we possibly gain by deliberately choosing a path of unknowing? By admitting the limits of our knowledge to maybe encounter a deeper reality? It's a huge question that Lossky's thought really forces us to ask ourselves.